Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. We might ask everyone to take their seats and we'll get started very shortly. Welcome to the official launch of the Perinatal Mental Health Week for 2022. And I'd like to welcome those in the room, as many people are also joining us virtually. We have a wave to everybody there at home. My name's Davina Smith. I'm a newsreader at Channel 9. And I'm delighted to be your MC for this morning over a beautiful breakfast and a lovely time to meet and greet everyone here at Parliament House in Canberra. And I know some of you have travelled from quite a long way to be here this morning for a very special cause. So thank you so much for your dedication to be here. It's so wonderful to see so many people in the mental health space being acknowledged and elevated on the national agenda. And we're so grateful to have the Assistant Minister for Mental Health and Suicide Prevention, the Honourable Emma McBride, here this morning, along with the Shadow Minister for Mental Health and Suicide Prevention, the Honourable Melissa McIntosh, in the room with us today. And there are also 46 different perinatal and early parenting organisations who are true partners in this space that are bringing amazing life to this campaign. So thank you all for being here this morning. We'd like to welcome to the stage a Ngunnawal woman, a local elder, Serena Williams, her daughter, emerging elder Pearl Williams, and baby Jajam Kevin to the stage to do a special Kevin for a very special welcome to country.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Serena Williams and I'm accompanied by my family today. So I have my niece daughter, Pearlie Williams. I have my other niece daughter, Minnie Tompkins. I have my nephew, Lama Lama Bunjalung Man, Beckett Carmody, and our grandson, Kevin Crowe. Kevin is named after his both great-grandfathers who were have done some great things in their life. You may know Kevin Carmody, who sings From Little Things, Big Things Grow. So his name, which is Beckett's grandfather, and the girl's grandfather, my dad, Harold Crowe Williams, who was a role model and established a lot of things here in the ACT. So we're here to continue the legacy of our elders, past, present and future, and I'd like to acknowledge them. I'd also like to acknowledge any other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today. I'd also like to acknowledge the ministers that are here today, and a particular great friend of mine, Emma and Yvonne, Minister for the People, I say, of the ACT. Today is a very, very important day, and a welcome to country is acknowledging the business that you're actually doing on country, and we'd like to open that with welcome arms of accepting these conversations that are about to happen, because mental health impacts all families. It impacts mothers, it impacts fathers, it impacts the aunties, the uncles, the grandparents, the siblings. It actually affects the whole of everyone. And there's a lot of things that particularly go on in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander families where we have high statistics. Myself, I worked with Lifeline Australia and I wrote accredited training for domestic and family violence in DV Alert version 1 and version 2, Indigenous communities, and travelled to 28 communities, and then also headed up the Mulyan Murra, an Aboriginal Access to Justice program here in the ACT with the Women's Legal Centre, with women, being confronted a lot with mental health. Not just to say women go through this, but men actually go through this too. But, our women here in the ACT and surrounding regions suffered a lot from DV, but also suffered a lot from just parent, with the high stats of, care and protection, CYPS coming in. ACT has the highest rate of children being removed for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in Australia, so that's massive. But we are here to do a welcome to country, and I'd like to acknowledge the Perinatal Health Week. We're very proud to be here and be a part of it, and representative of family of one of the oldest protocols and cultures in the world of Aboriginal Ngunnawal people. And I will hand over to my niece, Pearl, who is coming to as an emerging Ngunnawal leader. I think this is important because as parents, we pass our knowledge on. We allow others to lead, and that's what a great leader is. And, you know, we've got a beautiful up and coming leaders all here with us today. So I'm going to hand over to Pearl now, who'd like just to have a couple of words. Thank you.
Hello. I've just become a first-time mother, and just knowing like how much struggle that it is to have a baby and everything, I never knew the joy, all the emotions just having a baby. There's been a lot of ups and downs. I've had a few breakdowns, but it's been so joyful, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I'm so glad to have little Kevin in my life. And he's just, I love him so much. As an emerging Ngunnawal leader, I'd like to welcome you to country on behalf of our elders, past, present and future. Yedamora, hello, welcome. I sweep this land for you to leave your footprints. Najan, the waters of Ngunnawal country that will cleanse you of all harm. And Malian, the totem of our people that will oversee, protect and guide you on your journey through country. Welcome, welcome, welcome to beautiful Ngunnawal country.
Welcome, everyone. I hope you have a great morning.
Thank you.
Serena and Pearl, thank you so much. That was so beautiful. And baby Kevin, we need to give him a round of applause. The best behaved baby in the room. Well, I don't know if you noticed, but as soon as you came to the microphone, he just started gooing and garring. He knew mummy's voice straight away. So it's beautiful. Thank you for such a warm welcome to country, especially considering that it is 3 generations of a family who could come and welcome us here today, which is so, so special. It reiterates the strength and the connections and the kinship through many generations that we can celebrate here today. I would also like to acknowledge the Ngunnawal people as traditional custodians of the land in which we gather here today, and I pay my respects to elders past and present. I extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. I'd also like to recognise anyone with us today who has lived experience of mental health issues, specifically those who've had lived experience with perinatal depression and anxiety. It is your voices and experience that help us reduce the stigma surrounding mental health issues. Thank you for your courage. It is not easy just to be in this room when you've faced some of those challenges in your life, and I speak from that experience in my life as well. So thank you for being here today, and for the people who are going to share their stories later on this morning, thank you for having the courage to be here. Nothing in this room is by accident. The people who are here this morning, including right down to the flowers on the tables, and you'll see in front of you, there are beautiful sprigs of chamomile. That's not your breakfast. It is supposed to relax and calm you. I'm not sure whether you put it in your tea or your coffee or pick your teeth afterwards, maybe, I'm not sure, but it's there to enjoy and to calm us this morning throughout the day. As a mother who's experienced significant perinatal depression and anxiety myself, and as a journalist and a storyteller, I know the importance of having a space and a freedom to share stories with people who've been through similar experiences, so that we can get rid of the shame and the stigma surrounding those feelings. I've got 2 little girls. I've got Rose, who's 6 years old, and Hope, who is 1. And I suffered postnatal depression and anxiety with Rose. When she was 6 years old, she was a reflux baby, and we didn't sleep for 3 years, which is why there's a 6-year gap between her and Hope. And Hope's name is not by accident as well, because she is all of my hopes and my dreams of having a second baby and getting through postnatal anxiety and depression, and being here today to hopefully share my shush. You don't know how to respond to that. My watch is talking to me, sorry. We would like to welcome here today 46 wonderful perinatal and early parenting organisations from around the country who are united in sharing their voices, their powerful voices. And the message today is, we're here, we get it. We are here and we get what you're going through. 46 organisations create significant impact in our community, sharing the many supports and resources that are available to expectant and new parents in the most vulnerable times of their lives. So thank you so much to all those organisations who are helping save families and save lives, and for being here today. Your organisations are vital in helping parents receive the right care and the right time in their lives. We'd also like to recognise this morning our dignitaries and our official guests, the Honourable Emma McBride MP, Assistant Minister for Mental Health and Suicide Prevention, and Assistant Minister for Rural and Regional Health, who is hosting us here today. The Honourable Jed Carney, Assistant Minister for Health and Aged Care. The Honourable Melissa McIntosh, Shadow Minister for Mental Health and Suicide Prevention, and Senator Wendy Askew. We'd also like to thank and recognise the local ACT members who are with us today. The Honourable Emma Davidson, ACT Minister for Mental Health, Assistant Minister for Families and Community Services, Minister for Disability, Minister for Justice and Health, Minister for Veterans and Seniors. You've got a lot on your plate. The Honourable Rachel Stephen-Smith, ACT Minister for Health, Minister for Families and Community Services and for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Affairs, and Ed Cox, MLA, Acting Shadow Minister for Mental Health. To the secretaries, the members of the Department of Health who are here today, and to all our guests, welcome. This year, we also have so many messages and video messages from MPs across our great nation, and you can have a look at those on our website, which is pmhweek.org.au. Perinatal Mental Health Week continues to grow each year, and we focus this week on daily messages to help drive awareness of many experiences related to pregnancy and birth that have an impact on our wellbeing. The messages that we'll explore for this week include the stigma and the barriers attached with perinatal depression and anxiety, grief and loss, LGBTQI+ families, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander families and peoples, dads and non-birthing partners, regional and rural and remote parents, and of course, birth trauma as well. Thank you again to all of those courageous parents who have allowed us to share their very personal journey through this week, and to help encourage other parents to speak up, to seek help should they need support. It's your courage that's saving lives. I'd like you all now to welcome your Minister to provide us an address, Emma McBride, who was first elected to Parliament in 2016. Growing up in Wyong in New South Wales, Emma worked at Wyong Hospital for nearly a decade. She was formerly the Chief Pharmacist at Wyong Hospital and a Deputy Director of Pharmacy for the Central Coast Local Health Districts. Emma was also a specialist in mental health pharmacy and has been keen to draw on her background and training to help shape the future of mental health policy in this country. Please welcome to the stage the Honourable Emma McBride. I know.
Thank you, Davina. Thank you for that very generous welcome. And thank you to Serena Pearl, and especially to baby Kevin Crowe for making us so welcome here today. I'm pleased to be joining you for this morning's Perinatal Mental Health Week breakfast as the Assistant Minister for Mental Health and Suicide Prevention. Before I begin, I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, the Ngunnawal people, and I extend that respect to all First Nations people who are here with us today, and pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. And in doing so, I recognise your kinship and how much we have to learn from our First Nations people about family. And I'm proud to be part of a government that is committed to implementing the Uluru Statement from the Heart in full: voice, treaty, and truth. I'd also like to acknowledge our special guests here today, and there are many, because this is such an important cause, which is so close to the hearts of many of us. To my friend and colleague, Jed Carney, the Assistant Minister for Health and Ageing, Melissa McIntosh, Shadow Assistant Minister for Mental Health and Suicide Prevention, my colleagues, Dr. Michelle Amanda Raj and Dr. Mike Freelander, a paediatrician who is well known to many of you. To Emma Davidson, who I now know is the Minister for the People, congratulations and welcome. To Ed Cox, the Shadow ACT Minister for Mental Health, and to all of the 46 partners who are either here with us today or joining us around the country. As some of you may know, and as Davina said, I worked in mental health for nearly 10 years in my local community before I came to the Parliament. And now in this role, which is so humbling to be able to hold alongside my colleague Jed and Malandiri McCarthy and Annika Wells and Mark Butler, we are all committed together to work side by side with you to be able to improve the mental health and well-being of all Australians, and especially today, those who are experiencing or have experienced perinatal depression. What you may not know is that I'm one of 8 children. And I would like today to acknowledge my mum, Barbie, who I spoke to before I came here this morning, and my late father, Grant, and all of those parents, grandparents, friends, carers, caregivers, non-birthing parents who are part of today. And what I know is that for many of you, becoming a parent or carer is a rewarding experience. But as Pearl has spoken about this morning, it has its ups and downs. And I want to, in acknowledging Davina's lived experience, to recognise Rose and Hope and all of those who have lived or living experience and have the courage and the bravery to share their story so that other people know that they're not alone, that they're not isolated, and that there is care and support that is available. That's why it's so important that we have these conversations and that we have this week, and that each day this week, there'll be a separate message to those people and to those around them. So we can encourage people to speak up when they're struggling, to be open and honest, so those around them can recognise and support it, and to recognise the signs and to break down the stigma of mental ill health, which in some pockets of our society is still pervasive. The theme for this year's Perinatal Mental Health Week is "We're here, we get it, and we do." We want new and expectant parents to know that they're not alone, and that there is care and support available to them if and when they need it. There are so many organisations here in this room that I've had the pleasure to meet and who are contributing so much to the mental health and well-being of people all around Australia. We understand the importance of raising awareness about perinatal mental health, especially when you look at the figures. It's estimated almost 100,000 Australians are affected by perinatal depression and anxiety every year. Up to 1 in 5 women and up to 1 in 10 men will experience anxiety or depression. And perinatal mental health can cause significant harm, not only to parents, but also to children. And it can have lifelong impacts for their social, emotional, and physical well-being, which is why we're all here today, to celebrate the success, how far we've gone, but also recognise more that we have to do to raise awareness about perinatal mental health so more Australians know support is there. Because our mental health matters. These services are available that can help women or men or non-birth parents in perinatal period for mental illness, which is an important part of pregnancy and postnatal care. Early intervention is critical, and these services mean people can access timely support when and if they need it. And as part of an incoming government, and with my colleagues who are here today, we're determined to work with you, to walk side by side with your organisations to help improve the mental health and well-being of all Australians, including women's health during and after pregnancy and support for families affected by stillbirth. Parents and carers face challenges every day, as Davina and Pearl have said. That's why it's so important for people who are struggling to know that they can speak up, that they can seek care and support, and they're not alone. And I want to finish by thanking all the babies in the room. So to all the babies in the room who are learning to speak up, this is your platform. We are so grateful that you're here today. You're what today is about. So to all the babies in the room, thank you and congratulations.
Thank you so much, Emma. My 1-year-old wanted to come today as well, over my dead body. I figured this was my one chance to fly down from Sydney and to get a full night's sleep, and not be interrupted. The 6-year-old said, "What are we wearing?" And I said, "Your school uniform, because you're going to school on Monday and you're not coming either." I'm very proud to be an ambassador for the Gidget Foundation as well. And one of the many things the Gidget Foundation says is start talking. It's hard to start talking when you go through perinatal anxiety and depression. And I know for me, it has never been easy to stand up and share my story. And I tried to keep my suffering and my diagnosis secret for so long. I didn't want to burden anybody. And the first time I told my parents about it, Rose would have been about 12 months old, and I'd written a piece for the Women's Weekly. And I actually couldn't find the words to tell mum and dad how I'd been feeling for the last 12 months. So I just slipped the copy, like any Irish Catholic family does, where they don't have a hard conversation, you just slip a piece of paper in front of them and hope they get the message. Mum read it and she said, "That's not true. This isn't right. You're the best actress if that's true, because you're not suffering. This isn't right." And Dad cried. And Dad is a hard farmer from Queensland, and I don't think I've ever seen him cry in his life. We need to start talking, as hard as it is and as vulnerable as it makes you feel. I know the strength that I have found from speaking up and sharing my story has helped save other people's lives. And that is so important, to let people know that they are not alone. And I did it as well, more than anything, for my daughter Rose and my daughter Hope, because God forbid if they ever go through what I've been through, they will know that there's nothing wrong with putting a hand up and getting help. And hopefully by the time they become mums, if they become mums, we will have moved even further in this space, or the stigmas will be gone even more, and they will be able to get help much faster and quicker than I did. We are going to talk today, and it's very important that we share the lived experience of many different people who have suffered perinatal anxiety and depression. And we have some very important speakers with us this morning. Some of them have had a night of at home in a hotel room without babies. And some of them have been here with 2-week-old babies. All of them deserve a round of applause. So please welcome up to the stage for our panel this morning, Craig Anderson, Millie Patama, Tara Aguayo, and Kathy No. And Kathy is bringing her 2-week-old baby, Harvey, who is the most adorable little soul. Please welcome them to the stage. As they come up and take their seats, we'd also like to acknowledge Craig's partner, Beck, who's in the room here this morning as well. Beck said that Craig had a great night's sleep, helped by a couple of beers apparently, and Beck didn't. So you can have an afternoon nap, I hope, today. All of you have the most extraordinary stories, and you're so brave to be here and to share them today. And I find each and every one of you inspirational. Craig, start with you, seeing you're closest to me. So Craig has a little boy and twin daughters, and it was tough first time around, and then you went back for twins, which I don't know how that was for you.
Neither do I, most of the time.
Tell us a bit about your story and your experience.
Yeah, so we've got a 5-year-old son, and I think it's a pretty varied experience ours, because my wife, Rebecca, who's here, was diagnosed with postnatal depression, really early on. She wasn't coping. We were struggling to feed our son. Breastfeeding, Clark, didn't take as naturally as we were led to believe it would happen. So
Never easy.
Yeah. So Clark wouldn't really feed well, which meant he wouldn't sleep well. And it was really, really impacting my wife mentally. So we got in touch with the Gidget Foundation. Beck started her treatment. And in the meantime, I tried to, pick up the slack at home. I put a lot of expectation on myself to be super dad, to continue to support my wife as best I can, pick up the duties at home, continue to work at a level that I was before, maintain my friendships, maintain my relationships. And I thought I was doing a pretty decent job, and then it all came crashing down. I was never particularly comfortable with my son in public places. I was always pretty anxious with him and the way he impacted others. Doing something like what Kathy's doing right now would have set me absolutely spare, even at a cafe or a restaurant. And I had an altercation with a member of the public on public transportation. It was pretty innocuous. And it took every ounce of my mental resilience at the time not to get very violent very quickly. And I had my 6-month-old son in my hands at the time. So that was really the caveat for my wife to say, you need to go and get some help, because after that, I was frightened to leave the house. I couldn't leave our apartment. I would make any excuse not to go and just lie on the lounge room floor with my son, which is the only place I felt comfortable as a father. So, you know, that was really the start. And then when we had the girls, you know, it was a completely different story for me. You know, we had the girls prematurely in the NICU unit during lockdown in COVID, and that just led a bunch of other issues that we're still working through, to be completely frank and honest with everyone. But yeah, it's been an up and down journey, that's for sure. It hasn't been something that I've gone through and it's in the past. It is still something that we manage and that we work on day to day.
Had you heard of a dad having postnatal anxiety and depression?
No. I still remember Beck saying, go and talk to the Gidget Foundation, and I thought she'd gone loopy again. I was like, what are you talking about?
Why was that so strange?
You know, I naively at the time, I thought it's a hormones thing, you know, it's baby blues, it's hormones. I didn't give birth, my hormones aren't out of whack. And I remember the appointment, Beck had made it for me. And I remember standing out the front looking at the Gidget House building in North Sydney going, what am I doing here? Like, I felt like the biggest fraud in the world. And I almost didn't go. And in the end, I said to myself, go in, ask some questions to see how you can help Beck. And I walked in, and within 4 minutes, I'm a bawling mess. And the psychologist said, you have postnatal anxiety and depression. And for me, the weight of the world came off my shoulders, because as a man, and a really typical man who likes to fix things, I had something I could blame. And it wasn't just that I was a bad father. I had something I could say, it's an illness. It's something that I can work at and get better at. And it was a weight of the world came off my shoulders. But again, complete naivety, had no idea.
It's hard. I know my husband quite often reflects on the fact that it's hard to watch someone you love go through it, because as you said, the dad tries to put everything back together. And that's not always easy, is it?
No, I mean, it was hard seeing Beck go through that. You know, more difficult seeing her go through that than me going through mine. But similarly, it's been really difficult for her seeing me go through things. And as a dad, nothing ever felt natural to me. You know, I remember holding Clark for the first time and expecting that fireworks love moment, you know, that you see in the movies where I'm like, this is the happiest moment of my life. And I held him, and it just felt bloody awkward. He was arching his back, and I'm kind of like here, and his head's flopping around like a paddle pop stick in a hot chip cup. And I was just like, oh, and I put it back, and I ticked the box, and I got the happy photo. And then I was like, well, what do I do now? Nothing ever felt natural. I couldn't get him to feed. I couldn't get him to sleep. I couldn't comfort him as well as Beck. So yeah, it was a difficult start, and I had this expectation of what I was supposed to be in my head, and I wasn't that guy. And it was just self-loathing that I couldn't be the father that I wanted to be, or that I thought was expected to be.
I hope life's crazy, but better for you now.
Yeah, sometimes.
You take the ups and downs with you as you go. Craig, thank you so much. Millie is our lovely next guest on our stage. Millie has a milestone next week. She's got a first birthday for beautiful Ty. Her partner, Jessie, is back at the hotel looking after Ty.
Well, they've actually gone to the park now, I think. They're being swooped by magpies.
Oh dear.
And apparently Ty's loved it.
Millie and Jessie are quite an extraordinary couple. They were foster mums before going through IVF to have Ty. You went through a miscarriage as well. I'm so sorry for that. When did you begin to realise that perhaps you were suffering some form of anxiety or depression?
Whilst I was still pregnant, it was during, the lockdowns, and I think everybody kind of had a sense of anxiety then. So I don't know if I really took it serious, because I just thought, oh, well, everyone feels anxiety. And then when Tide was born, I was just kind of like, oh, you know, it's the baby blues, it's just hormones, it will pass. And I think I kept thinking it will pass, but it was kind of the dark cloud was just getting heavier and heavier, and I was just feeling more and more anxious, really.
And you were telling me that wasn't your personality. You're such an
No.
optimistic person.
Oh my God, I've never felt anxious about anything. I've never felt like depressed or sad. I've always been like a eternal optimist, like a happy-go-lucky person. So I think for me to feel so anxious was just so far removed from who I am as a person. And I think that's why I really struggled with it. And I think that's why my wife struggled with it as well, because she's naturally more of an anxious person, and I'm kind of the person that, you know, holds us together. So then when I like fell apart, we were just like, what are we doing? Yeah.
So how did you get help then?
My midwife, I had a student midwife, because I think I was explaining to you earlier that you know, I didn't go to anything. I didn't go to my scans. I didn't like register with the hospital. I was just, after going through IVF and, you know, a miscarriage and everything, I was just too scared to like go to the hospital, you know, in case the baby wasn't there anymore. So I just did nothing. And then suddenly I'm like really pregnant and like, oh, I should probably like, I might have a baby like on the kitchen floor or something. I should probably do something. So I like managed to get up the courage and go and, you know, register with the midwives. And I picked the student team because I thought, oh, you know, it might be a bit more chilled out. But my student midwife was just an angel, an absolute angel. And she straight away was like, you know, I think there's something up here. And she did the testing and was like, oh, we need to get you some serious help right away. So
and you've had a help of a combination of medication and a psychologist. What's life like for you now?
It's much better, much better. I think it took a really long time and lots of different trial and error, but I think the one thing that's really helped me is just talking about it and, you know, finding out that I'm not like alone in this, because it was just a really scary situation. And I used to think it was postnatal depression. Like I just assumed people felt sad. I didn't realize that people feel anxious, or they have like OCD, or they have like intrusive thoughts, like all of this stuff I just didn't know existed, like the weird things that would go through your head that were just terrifying. Like I wasn't aware of that until, you know, I started looking into it more.
And you had the layers of a miscarriage, of IVF, and a same-sex couple as well. What is that like?
I think there's definitely stigma and things, and lots of situations would make me anxious, because, you know, you go for a scan and you think you're losing the baby, and then the doctors are like, oh, who's this? You know, is this your sister? And you're like, oh no, this is my part. Like, it's another layer of like having to over explain things all the time. And, you know, people will be like, oh, where's the dad? Or, you know, oh, does the dad have this medical history? And I'm like, oh, there isn't a dad, like there's a donor. And like there's added layers of like anxiety, I guess, that come with that.
And how is Jessie?
She's so supportive. Like she really, she was the one that kind of forced me, you know, to not forced me, but like lovingly persuaded me to go on anti-anxiety medication, go to the doctors, things like that. Because I didn't leave the house. Like I didn't drive for the first 8 months. Like I wouldn't go anywhere. I was just like terrified to do anything, like really, really scared. Yeah, I actually made her quit her job because I couldn't cope with her going to work, because I thought she was going to die. Like it was just horrible.
And yet life's changed so much. You're going back to work soon.
I'm going back to work next week. I know. Oh my God, I'm scared.
That in itself is worth a round of applause. It's hard.
I'm excited. I'm so far. Yeah, I'm excited to get back to work.
Well, thank you so much. You have a really unique experience, and you are so optimistic and so amazing, and it's so good to hear your story. Tara, welcome.
Is this okay?
It's working. Oh, good. Beautiful Tara has the most amazing story as well. She went through a really tough time with birth and has suffered birth trauma. Got a beautiful little girl. She's 2, is that right?
Yeah, she's 2.
Yeah. How are the terrible 2s? Are they terrible? Are they tantrums? Are they?
It's all of it. It's her world. I'm just living in it. But she runs everything. So.
Your story is really touched me because you had a physical trauma that you had to heal from. And then you had the mental scars as well, and the recovery from that as well. And I know when I went through treatment, what people would say to me was go out, exercise, run, try and burn off that energy. But when you've suffered a birth trauma and an injury, you can't do that. What was life like?
Yeah, for me, I used to be an avid runner. Obviously, I went to the gym. I never really thought twice about like not being able to use my body the way I was used to using it. And I never knew what a pelvic floor was until it was compromised. So yeah, I mean, running used to be my outlet. And after the birth of my daughter, it's not ideal. I probably could run, but it's, yeah, I mean.
Don't do it. I don't do it anymore.
No, yeah, I'm not there yet. So
it's hard though, because you have the baby, you're in the hospital, there's so much focus on this baby, but you have been through, at best, when everything goes to plan, something that's quite profound that you need to heal from. Was there much of a focus on you, knowing that things had gone wrong and that you'd suffered an injury and that you were healing?
In the hospital, I didn't know what had happened to me. It took me, it's sometimes still hard to talk about, but it took me about 14 weeks to know the extent of my injuries. I had a difficult forceps delivery. And I knew something was wrong. I couldn't walk. I had to get around in a wheelchair for several days. And my daughter was in special care. So every time I would try to get up to go see her and feed, and yeah, the focus was definitely not on me. Even though I wasn't in a good way physically, it was, I just feel like that trend, like the focus was always on the baby from the minute she was born. And I think even myself, I felt guilty thinking about myself when my daughter was in special care. I felt like the focus needed to be on her. And of course, I didn't know that the injuries, I didn't know that I sustained the injuries that I did. And I also didn't know that I could sustain them. Like I didn't know that people had the injuries that I had. So I thought surely a doctor would say something or notice something, or I don't know.
And the problem with a birth injury as well is that you could be looking fabulous, glowing, being a new mum, and yet there's a profound injury that you're carrying. And then on top of that is a mental health battle as well that, again, people don't see. How did you cope being able to explain and share with people what you were going through?
Yeah, I feel like it is kind of like an invisible injury. I didn't know how to share, like my birth itself was quite traumatic. I had a severe postpartum hemorrhage, and it just wasn't what I had planned, what I had ever imagined. And so I was trying to come to terms with the birth itself. And as I continued realizing something was wrong with me physically, I remember asking other women in my mom's group and other friends like that had children, oh, did you have a forceps delivery? And they're like, no. Okay. Or the ones that did, they'd say, oh no, I'm fine. Like, I don't know, I haven't had any symptoms or issues. I'm like, I just kept comparing and thinking, gosh, like, what am I doing wrong? Why did this go so differently for me? Or could I have done something differently? I almost blamed myself. So I think I wanted to share my situation, but when I would feel like people couldn't relate. And I almost felt weird because it's not normal to talk about your vagina with people. It's just a strange taboo thing. So the more I opened up for a long time, the worse I felt. Because I feel like I'd either get this sense of otherness and pity, like people would suck their teeth and go, ooh, yeah, that sounds bad. Or yeah, they just didn't get it, I think. Yeah, so.
You don't do anything by halves, I hear. You're getting married next week and you're here. Yeah. I don't know how you're doing that. You've got the 2-year-old at home and you've got some big decisions ahead of you in your future as well, don't you?
Yeah, I've always thought that I would have, I would try for a second child. We wanted two, not three, not four, just two. But we wanted to try around two when my daughter was two. And that time has come, and we're nowhere near that point mentally, physically. It's a non-option right now. So that's kind of my big decision. And yeah.
I think as we discussed earlier, though, you've been through hell. You've been through the absolute worst. So anything else has got to be a walk in the park after what you've been through. So thank you for sharing your story today. You are incredible.
Thank you.
Kathy and Harvey are our last panelists. Kathy, my goodness, how did you get here? Don't tell me by car or how did you physically get here?
Yeah, I think with me, because I suffer from anxiety and depression already, I need something to look forward to. I'm the type of person that just likes to have things planned, organized, far ahead. And this is one of the events that I've been looking forward to in the past 2 months. So I was thinking, oh my God, Harvey, hurry up and get out of bed, because I didn't want to be past my due date. Otherwise, I would not have been able to come here. So this is Harvey, everyone, and he's 2 months old today. I think with me, I just like to make things happen. I'm a go-getter, and I think that is also my downfall because I put a lot of pressure on myself. Yeah.
Tell us a bit about your story, because Harvey's your second child.
Yeah, so Harvey is my second child, and I guess my story is one where my anxiety and depression has been with me since I was a child, and it was very much mismanaged. So when I had my first son, Hendrik, it was like anxiety and depression, like on steroids. And to add another layer of complexity, cultural expectations as well. So just for background, my heritage is Vietnamese. I was born here. Both sides of the family are from Vietnam as refugees. And they, of course, carried with them all these cultural expectations and traditions that I felt a lot of pressure to uphold.
What were those?
So typically in the first month, there's like a period of confinement where there's like a lot of, I guess for us, we would find them quite unusual. But there is some logic behind it, which I haven't really investigated fully. But some of the practices include, not being able to wash your hair for a month. Also things like eating hot foods, not physically hot foods, but like it's to do with the yin, the yang, the balance, and that sort of Eastern medicine philosophy, which I wasn't very familiar with and still not familiar with. So yeah, when I had my son, I was doing all these things and I would get yelled at for doing them. It's simple things like drinking cold water, squatting to pat my dog, drying my hair or washing my hair. Oh my gosh, washing your hair could be a sin.
That should be an achievement with a new mum.
Yeah, so just all those little things that really add up, and hormones and lack of sleep, and just trying to adjust to my new identity as a mother. I was very much focused on my career, so I'd just been made redundant. So just all those little things really compounded and affected me mentally, physically, to the point where, it was really hard to talk about it because in a lot of Asian cultures, and I also speak for myself, that you would rather commit a crime than disappoint your parents. Because like disappointing your parents is like the ultimate sin. So everything was much like, yes, I'll do it. Yes, I'll do it.
So trying to keep them happy,
trying to keep them
newborn
happy.
alive, trying to discover yourself as a mum.
So I kind of just lost myself for a couple of years.
So when did you work out something wasn't quite right? Was it straight away?
Pretty much straight away. I knew something was wrong, but I was in denial because, well, I like to blame something. So I'm a Taurus, so I'm really stubborn. But I think it took me about maybe a year before I got professional help.
And how did that come about?
Just my relationships with people, family, friends were failing. So that's a big sign when you prioritize things, you know, like those OCD kind of habits. When you start to obsess over those things at the expense of relationships, that's when you know that you got to get some help. I kind of think of it as stealing joy from people. I was stealing joy from everyone, especially myself. Yeah.
To go back and have a second baby, then I know that was one of the hardest things for me when you've been through that experience and you feel like you've failed and it hasn't gone to plan. How hard was it to make a choice to have a second bub?
It was really hard because in between I had a miscarriage and the trauma of the first pregnancy and also birth came back again because it was like, oh, you know, everyone gets a miscarriage. That's what family said. You know, it's just so normal. And I didn't feel validated. I didn't feel heard or listened to. So that was another kind of mental barrier. They're a huge one. And then I think, 3 years later, I had him because I also had some challenges with the miscarriage physically. So I can also relate to your story. Just my body wasn't back to normal. My periods didn't return. So I had to get a couple of surgeries to correct that.
I guess you're still in that post-delivery phase as well, where what life is adjusting and the body's adjusting as well. What are you doing now at the moment to keep yourself mentally well?
Well, I still see my psychologist once a month, and just a lot of mindfulness kind of activities. So just lots of breathing, talking about it, asking for help. I think that's a big thing because I'm not the best person at asking for help. My husband's here, so he's a great support, and you know, I've just acknowledged and thanked him for being so supportive because this event is a big deal to me. Being here is a big deal in front of you. So,
You're amazing, Kathy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just quickly before we finish, I wanted to ask you all 2 questions. First of all, what can we do better in the perinatal mental health space? You've got the ears of the politicians, the organisations that are helping new parents. What can we improve? Start with you, Craig.
I mean, funding. The scary thing, when I had a relapse when the girls were born, I was lucky enough to get straight into Gidget because we'd formed relationships there. But the wait times that I understood they were going through with COVID was scary. And if I didn't speak to someone within the 2 days that I did, I wouldn't be here. It's that simple. My family would look very, very different. So, you know, the people that are in the room that do make decisions, that have given the funding that you do, thank you. The impact it's had on my family, that the Gidget Foundation in particular has had on my family, it can't be understated. And as men, I guess, we need to do better at talking. I mean, I've within my inner circle since I've started this role with the Gidget Foundation, the amount of men in my inner circle that have said to me, "Oh my God, I relate to that. Where can I go and get help?" is staggering. And I think the stigma is reducing so much in our society, and men are really good at offering help, but then terrible at admitting that they need it. So I think we can do that a lot better. We can be vulnerable, and it's like being vulnerable is its own superpower, because I just admit that I needed help, and there's strength in that. And every time I have a conversation like this, or every time I have a conversation in a more intimate place, it adds a layer of protection to me. So I just think we need to start talking a little more and be a bit more honest with ourselves as men.
You're exactly right. Millie, what can we do better?
I mean, I agree with a lot of that's already been said, but I think more education around the fact that it's not just, postnatal depression, more education around all of the different elements to do with the mental health, so that people can seek assistance when they're suffering from symptoms that aren't necessarily just feeling sad. I think that was a bit of a barrier for me to getting help, because I was like, oh, well, I kind of feel happy, but I felt like deathly anxious and fearful of absolutely everything. So I think that's important.
Tara.
Yeah, kind of piggybacking as well. I think for me, I can only speak from kind of a birth trauma perspective. And so for me, I also had postnatal depression and anxiety, but the missing piece for me was that I did have PTSD, and it took over a year to get a diagnosis, despite seeing actually a handful of psychologists who should have been able to see very clearly that I had very severe trauma symptoms. And so I think a more understanding and education on birth trauma, that it's really, really prevalent. It's, I think 1 in 3 Australians describe their birth as traumatic. And I just don't think mental health professionals are very familiar with that concept. So they just kind of lump it in the PNDA category and say, oh, you'll be right in a couple months. And then a couple months comes and goes and you're still not okay. So just that understanding that birth can be very, very traumatic, that needs to be spoken about and better understood, I think.
And Kathy.
Just the intersection of culture as well. I think just a lot more support that area, because there is still a lot of stigma in the multicultural communities in speaking up. So yeah, just more resources around perinatal and postnatal depression and anxiety for multicultural communities.
Finally, I want to leave you all with some hope. My little girl's name. Because we all need a bit of hope, and you're all survivors, what you've been through, to go through that darkest period of time in your life. I've been there. It is hell. But to come out the other side and to be so much stronger, and then to be able to stand up here and share your story, you are literally saving lives here today. Give us some hope. What is the best thing about your life right now, despite your experience and because of your experience?
Playing Mario Kart with my son. Yeah, he's got that. He's reached that age that he wants to play video games. He wants to be around dad. We wrestle. We kick a ball. I say to my wife, I say to my friends, I'm a terrible father of babies, and I'm a fantastic father of about 2-year-olds and up. It's not forever. This is a treatable disorder, and I mean, I think any parent, the best advice for them is, this too shall pass. Teething will pass. We're going through teething hell at the moment, right? So we just reaffirm ourselves that this is temporary. Everything that we speak about, or particularly that I went through, is not forever. So breathe, get through it. It's not forever. And it's being a parent, even through everything that I've been through. Being a parent is still the most amazing thing I've ever done in my life. It's not just bad because you struggle. It's still something that I absolutely love, and being the face of a perinatal postnatal anxiety disorder, but still smiling and laughing. They're not mutually exclusive.
Millie?
I would say, I used to sit there and think I just need to get through this day. I hope I survive this day. I hope my son doesn't die today. Every day I'd be please just survive this one day. And if you get through that day, and then the next day and the next day, and now it gets to the point where, I rarely think, I hope I survive today. And I have moments of crippling anxiety where I'm oh God, something bad could happen, but they're few and far between. And I see them getting less and less. And there's more days where I feel optimistic and happy, and I go and do something crazy like this, for example. So yeah, it gets better and it gets easier. You just have to get through that day, one day at a time, one night at a time.
Tara?
Yeah, I guess I'm on the same page. That's kind of where I want to go with this as well. I just remember in the early days, my whole life was dominated by naps and wake windows, and it was just ridiculous. I had no life. And Not that I have one necessarily now, but it's better. And I just feel more like myself now. And for a long time, I never thought that I would. It just seemed like in my mind, I thought I was going to have a newborn forever. And now that she's older, like I'm kind of like Craig, like I love being a mom to a toddler, to a kid. As much as I loved her as a baby, she's just fun. It just gets so much easier when their personalities come out and you can play with them and talk to them. And it just gets better, I guess, is the message I want to send. It's going to get a lot better. So.
And Kathy?
Yeah, life is much, well, it is challenging now being with a newborn, but I have less expectations on myself. And I think that can be quite liberating when you don't put those pressures on yourself.
You're amazing. Thank you so much for being so honest. Craig, Millie, Tara, Kathy, please put your hands together for our panels. Let your escape. And to their partners in the room as well, some that can't be here, but I know Beck and Dominic are here as well. Thank you so much for making that happen, for being part of their stories. You're just as much a success story and a reason why they're here today. I really hope that today we've helped some people out there, whether it's virtually or anyone in the room. And we understand why Perinatal Mental Health Week is so very important. It's our hope that we can help parents, just like those that are here today, to receive the right support and care during their perinatal period. This week, you can help us raise awareness by sharing the daily messages and content via social channels, creating content relevant with your organisations. You can tag us at PMH Week and the hashtag PMH Week 2022. And letting all expectant and new parents know that we are here and we get it. Thank you for being part of this launch event as we head into what will be a big week for the sector of perinatal mental health. Thank you. Please feel free to enjoy your breakfast, mingle, share your stories, have a laugh, because life is wonderful despite its dark, challenging moments. And I speak from that. I think back to the most terrible moments in my life where I thought it wasn't worth living and that my daughter would be better off without me. And now I have a 6-year-old who, if I wasn't here today, I don't know what I would do without her. She's extraordinary, and my hope as well. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy the rest of your breakfast.